The first bullet shattered the stained glass sun painted by children. It exploded through the front window of Harbor House Community Center at 9:17 on a Thursday night, sending bright pieces of yellow and blue glass across the polished floor. Natalie Brooks had just finished locking the donation cabinet. She froze. Across the room, 6-year-old Jordan Price stood beside the coat rack holding a cardboard solar system he had made for school. His mother was late picking him up from the evening tutoring program. His eyes widened as the second bullet punched through the wall above his head. Natalie moved before fear could reach her. She ran across the room, threw herself over the boy, and dragged him behind the reception desk as another burst of gunfire ripped through the windows. "Stay down," she whispered. Jordan clutched her sweater. "Miss Natalie, I'm right here." Outside, tires screamed against wet pavement. Through the broken glass, Natalie saw 3 black SUVs surround the curb. For one terrible second, she thought more attackers had arrived. Then the rear door of the middle vehicle opened. A tall man stepped into the rain. He wore a black overcoat over a tailored suit, and he moved with the calm of someone who had never once doubted that the world would obey him. Victor Moretti did not duck when another shot struck the brick beside his head. He simply lifted one hand. Men poured from the SUVs. The street erupted. Natalie pressed Jordan's face against her shoulder as gunfire cracked through the rain. The community center lights flickered. Books slid from the shelves. Somewhere in the kitchen, a pipe burst with a metallic scream. Then the front doors opened. Victor walked through the drifting dust as if entering a cathedral. Rain darkened his hair. A thin line of blood ran from his temple. His gaze crossed the ruined room and stopped on Natalie. Everything in his expression changed. Not softened. Victor Moretti did not look like a man capable of softness. But something sharpened inside him, something darker than anger. He crossed the room while his men secured the entrances. Natalie tightened her arms around Jordan. "Don't come closer." Victor stopped. His eyes moved over her face, her shoulders, the child in her arms, and the blood on her sleeve where flying glass had cut her. "Are you hurt?" His voice was quiet. That made it more frightening. "I said don't come closer." Jordan peeked out. Victor lowered himself to one knee several feet away, bringing his enormous frame closer to the child's level. "You're Jordan," he said. The boy stared at him. "How do you know my name?" Victor's jaw tightened. Natalie noticed. Before he could answer, one of his men approached. "Street is clear, boss. 2 shooters escaped east. 1 is down." Victor stood. "Find the others." The man nodded and disappeared. Natalie rose slowly, keeping Jordan behind her. "You knew this was going to happen." "No." "You knew his name." Victor looked at Jordan, then back at her. "I know every child who comes through this building." The words chilled her more than the gunfire. 3 nights earlier, Victor Moretti had offered Harbor House $2 million. Natalie had refused him in front of 200 people. Now armed men had attacked the center, and Chicago's most feared businessman had arrived before the police. She looked at the broken windows, the black SUVs outside, and the blood on Victor's face. "What did you bring to my door?" His expression did not move, but his silence answered her. Danger, power, secrets, and something else she did not yet understand. Victor took one step toward her. "You cannot stay here tonight. This center belongs to these families. And tonight someone tried to turn it into a grave. I'm not abandoning it." His eyes darkened. "That was not a request." Natalie lifted her chin. "You may be accustomed to frightening people into obedience, Mr. Moretti. I am not one of your employees." "No." His gaze held hers with unsettling intensity. "You are the woman standing between a child and a bullet." The room seemed to shrink around them. Sirens approached in the distance. Victor looked at the cut on her arm. Then he turned to his men. "Secure the building. Nobody enters without her permission." Natalie stared at him. "Your men are not staying here." "They are. You don't own Harbor House." His eyes returned to hers. "No," he said quietly. "You made that very clear. 3 nights earlier, Harbor House had been filled with music, white tablecloths, and people pretending not to notice the cracks in the ceiling. Natalie had spent 6 months planning the fundraiser. The community center needed a new heating system, updated electrical wiring, repairs to the roof, and enough funding to preserve the food pantry through winter. Harbor House served over 400 local families. It offered after-school tutoring, legal clinics, domestic violence counseling, job placement assistance, food distribution, and emergency support for parents facing eviction. It was also almost bankrupt. Natalie knew exactly how much money remained in every account: $28,412. Enough to survive 3 months if nothing else broke. At the fundraiser, Alderman Calvin Mercer had smiled for cameras and promised that the city would stand beside the neighborhood. Natalie had heard promises like that before. Then Victor Moretti arrived. The room changed before she saw him. Conversations lowered. Politicians straightened. Wealthy donors looked toward the entrance with nervous admiration. Victor walked in surrounded by men in dark suits, though none stood too close to him. He was 38, according to the newspapers. Billionaire developer, shipping magnate, owner of hotels, restaurants, private security companies, and half the luxury real estate along the Chicago River. The newspapers did not call him a mafia boss. They used phrases such as alleged underworld ties and suspected organized crime connections. The people in the room knew better. Victor Moretti did not need to introduce himself. Fear introduced him first. Natalie had been speaking with a mother from the housing assistance program when Mercer hurried toward Victor. "Mr. Moretti." "An honor." Victor barely looked at him. His attention had settled on Natalie. She wore a dark green dress that hugged her soft, curvy figure, though she had spent most of the evening tugging nervously at the sleeves. Her brown curls were pinned loosely behind her head. She was not the most glamorous woman in the room, and she knew it. Victor watched her anyway. Not casually, not politely. He watched her as if he had arrived, looking for something, and discovered it standing beneath cheap paper decorations. Mercer brought him over. "Natalie, this is Victor Moretti. I know who he is." Something almost like amusement touched Victor's eyes. She extended her hand. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, controlled, unhurried. The contact lasted one heartbeat too long. "I have heard remarkable things about this center," he said. "Most remarkable things happen here because volunteers work without being paid. Then they should be paid. That would require money. I have money. I've heard." Mercer laughed too loudly. Victor did not. His gaze remained on Natalie. Later, after the speeches, Victor approached the podium. He announced that the Moretti Foundation would donate $2 million to renovate Harbor House. The crowd erupted in applause. Natalie should have felt relief. Instead, she saw the architectural rendering one of Victor's assistants placed on the screen. The Victor Moretti Center for Community Advancement. His name stretched across the building. There were polished glass walls, private security gates, marble entrances, and no trace of the center's hand-painted signs or worn wooden floors. It looked beautiful. It did not look like Harbor House. Victor turned toward Natalie as the applause continued. She walked to the microphone. "Mr. Moretti, your generosity is overwhelming. You require repairs." "We do, and my foundation can provide them." "It can." The room quieted. Natalie looked at the image behind her. But Harbor House was built by families who were told they did not belong anywhere else. Every mark on these walls was made by someone rebuilding a life. Victor's face became unreadable. Natalie continued, "If your donation requires us to replace our identity with yours, then it isn't a gift." Mercer's smile vanished. Victor's men became perfectly still. Natalie's heart pounded, but her voice remained calm. "People need dignity more than buildings." A shocked silence fell across the room. Victor looked at her for a long time. Then he stepped closer to the microphone. "You are refusing $2 million. I am refusing the price attached to it. You believe my name would take something from them. I believe people who have been controlled their whole lives deserve one place that belongs to them." The danger in his eyes should have frightened her. Instead, she saw something else. Not anger. Recognition. Victor slowly removed the donation agreement from the podium. He folded it once. Then again. "You are either very brave," he said, "or dangerously unwilling to save yourself." Natalie met his gaze. Those are not always different things. He left without another word. For the next 3 days, she told herself she had done the right thing. Then the bullets came. The police questioned Natalie until after midnight. They suggested the attack might have been random gang violence. Victor stood in the hallway listening without expression. Natalie knew random violence did not involve trained shooters using silenced weapons. When the officers left, Victor found her in the center's kitchen wrapping gauze around her arm. Jordan had finally been collected by his mother. The staff had gone home. Victor's men remained outside. Natalie did not look up. "You can leave." He leaned against the doorway. "I sent a doctor." "I don't need one." "You were cut. I cleaned it." Glass can remain beneath the skin. So can arrogance, apparently. His eyes narrowed slightly. She expected him to become angry. Instead, he crossed the kitchen, took the bandage from her hand, and opened the medical kit. Natalie stared at him. "What are you doing?" "Correcting your terrible work. I'm a licensed social worker." "Then I hope you counsel wounds better than you dress them." She almost laughed. The impulse surprised her enough to make her silent. Victor pulled a chair in front of her and sat. "Your arm." "No." "Natalie." The way he said her name made the small kitchen feel intimate. She should have ordered him out. Instead, she extended her arm. Victor rolled back her torn sleeve. His hands were large and unexpectedly careful. There were scars across his knuckles, pale lines that did not belong to a billionaire who spent his life signing contracts. He cleaned the cut with precise movements. Natalie watched his face. "Why did you know Jordan's name?" Victor did not answer. "Why were you outside when the shooting started?" "I was not outside. You arrived in under 2 minutes. My men were watching the building." Her arms stiffened. His grip tightened gently. "Stay still. You had us under surveillance?" "Yes." "Since when?" "Since the fundraiser." Natalie pulled away. "You had no right. Someone accessed city records relating to this property 48 hours ago. The request came from a shell corporation tied to men who would not hesitate to kill you. And you decided not to tell me? I decided not to frighten you without evidence. You sent armed men to watch children. I sent armed men because children were in danger." His calmness made her angrier. "You don't get to control my life because you have information I don't." Victor stood. His body blocked the light above her. "I do not want control of your life." "Then what do you want?" Silence entered the space between them. Victor looked at her mouth. Only for a second. Then his gaze rose again. "I have not decided." The honesty unsettled her. He finished bandaging her arm. Natalie looked down at the clean white gauze. "Who attacked us?" "A group connected to the Ferraro family." She had heard the name. Everyone in Chicago had. The Ferraros controlled construction unions, gambling operations, and half the city contracts that disappeared into private hands. Why would they care about a community center? They don't. Then why? Because the land beneath it is worth $30 million. Natalie's breath caught. Victor stepped back. Alderman Mercer has been quietly preparing to condemn the building. Once the city takes possession, a private developer will purchase the block. Mercer promised to protect us. Calvin Mercer promises whatever the nearest camera requires. And the developer? Ferraro Urban Holdings. The pieces came together with sickening clarity. The fundraiser. Merci support. Victor's donation. You knew. I suspected. That's why you offered the money. I wanted the property protected under my foundation. You wanted your name on it. Yes. Why? Because nobody in this city touches what carries my name. The arrogance in the statement should have disgusted her. Instead, she understood. Victor had not tried to buy the center for publicity. He had been placing his body around it, like armor, without asking whether anyone wanted to be protected. Natalie stood. You should have told me. You would not have believed me. I don't know if I believe you now. Victor accepted that without reaction. He turned toward the doorway. Pack what you need. I'm going home. You are not going home alone. I am not going anywhere with you. He looked back at her. The shooters escaped. I'll stay with a friend. They know your address, your office, your routine, and the coffee shop you visit every morning at 7:40. Cold fear slid down her spine. Victor watched her absorb it. You knew all of that too? My security team did. That is not comforting. It was not intended to be. She folded her arms. I am not sleeping in one of your hotels surrounded by men with guns. Then I will sleep outside your apartment. Natalie stared at him. You're joking. Victor Moretti did not appear to know how. 1 hour later, Natalie stood at her apartment window and watched him sit in a black SUV across the street. Rain streamed over the glass. Victor had refused to come upstairs. She had refused to go to his penthouse. So he stayed outside. At 2 in the morning, she looked again. He was still there, At 4, he stood beside the car speaking quietly to one of his men. At 6:30, Natalie went downstairs carrying 2 cups of coffee. Victor turned as she approached. His black shirt was open at the throat. His coat hung over the car door. He looked as though he had not slept. She handed him a cup. "This does not mean I forgive the surveillance." He took it. "This does not mean I will stop. I could call the police." "You could. Would they arrest you?" "No." His answer was too immediate. Natalie sighed. Victor drank the coffee. His expression changed. "What? It has sugar. You look like a man who needs sweetness forced upon him." Something in his eyes warmed, then disappeared. "You should not walk outside alone. It's daylight. Men also kill in daylight. Do you always make breakfast sound threatening?" "I do not usually discuss breakfast." She leaned against the car. Across the street, a school bus collected 3 children from her building. Victor watched them. "Why did you know every child's name?" she asked again. He took another drink. "My foundation has supported Harbor House anonymously for 4 years. Natalie turned toward him. "What?" "The winter food program, the tutoring laptops, the emergency rent fund." She remembered anonymous grants arriving whenever the center came close to closing. "No return address. No publicity." "You?" "Yes." "Why?" Victor looked toward the community in front of them. "My sister needed a place like Harbor House once." The words were quiet enough to disappear beneath traffic. Natalie waited. Victor rarely looked vulnerable. Even now, his expression remained composed, but his thumb moved along the edge of the coffee cup. A small betrayal of control. "She died when she was 16, he said. "I'm sorry." People said that afterward. "And before?" "No one came." Natalie's anger softened. "What happened?" His gaze became distant. "Our father was not a forgiving man. Elena ran away several times. The final time, she went to a city shelter. They sent her back because he made a donation." Natalie felt something break open inside the sentence. "He bought their cooperation." "Yes. And you couldn't stop him." "I was 19. I believed power meant people obeyed you." Victor looked at her. "By the time I understood what power should mean, she was dead." Natalie said nothing. There were no comforting words large enough for old guilt. Victor placed the empty coffee cup on the hood of the car. "Your center would have hidden her. We would have tried. You would have stood between her and anyone who came through the door." "Yes." His gaze lowered to the bandage on her arm. "That is why I know the children's names." For the first time, Natalie saw the man beneath the empire. He was not soft. He was wounded in a place he had sealed behind money, violence, and control. And somehow, 3 nights earlier, she had spoken directly into that wound. People need dignity more than buildings. Her words had not angered him. They had condemned him. Victor drove her to Harbor House. The front windows were covered with plywood. Police tape hung from the entrance. Broken glass remained beneath the radiators. Natalie stopped on the sidewalk. "We have programs starting in 3 hours. The building is unsafe. Those families don't stop needing food because the windows are broken." Victor studied the damage. Then he removed his suit jacket. Natalie frowned. "What are you doing? Where are the tools?" "You own a construction company." "I asked where the tools are." 30 minutes later, Victor Moretti stood on a ladder, replacing a shattered window frame. He had rolled his sleeves to his elbows. His expensive white shirt was streaked with dust. A gun rested beneath his jacket on the reception desk. Natalie tried not to look at it. She also tried not to look at the muscles in his forearms as he drove screws into the frame. Both attempts failed. His security men repaired the doors, cleaned glass, and carried ruined furniture outside. Victor worked harder than all of them. At 9, volunteers began arriving. They stopped at the entrance. Mrs. Evelyn Carter, a 72-year-old retired teacher who ran the reading program, looked from Victor to Natalie. "Is that who I think it is?" "Yes." "Why is he holding a hammer?" "I have stopped asking questions." Victor glanced down from the ladder. "Mrs. Carter, the West classroom bookshelf is unstable. Do not allow children near it." Evelyn's eyebrows rose. "He knows my name too. He knows everyone's name. That is either romantic or deeply alarming." "It is not romantic." Victor's eyes met Natalie's from across the room. Evelyn smiled. "Of course not." By noon, the center reopened. Victor disappeared before reporters arrived. The next morning, Boxes of school supplies were delivered without a sender's name. Natalie knew immediately. She called Victor. He answered on the first ring. You sent 600 notebooks. The children required them. They required 80. Then you have enough for next year. You also sent tablets. They were outdated. They were manufactured 3 months ago. Technology declines quickly. Natalie leaned against her desk. You cannot replace volunteering with purchases. I volunteered yesterday. You repaired 1 window. I repaired 4. That is not the point. Explain the point. She looked through the office window. A father was helping his daughter choose a backpack from the donated supplies. The point is that helping people is not a transaction. You don't do one kind thing and become a good man. Victor was silent. I am aware, he said eventually. The words held no defensiveness, only certainty. Natalie closed her eyes. That came out harsher than I intended. It was accurate. She heard voices in the background, men speaking in Italian. Where are you? In a meeting. Then why did you answer? Another silence. Because you called. Her pulse changed. Victor continued. I will come tomorrow. To volunteer? Yes. What will you do? Whatever is broken. Natalie looked around Harbor House. Be careful what you promise. Over the next 3 weeks, Victor kept coming. Always anonymously. Always after removing his jacket. He repaired tables, delivered groceries, replaced leaking faucets, installed smoke detectors, and spent an entire Saturday assembling metal shelving for the food pantry. He spoke little. Children were not intimidated by him for long. They asked questions adults were afraid to ask. Did you ever kill somebody? Malik. Natalie warned. Victor tightened a bolt on the shelf. Yes. The 11-year-old boy's eyes widened. Natalie nearly dropped a box. Victor looked at Malik. But violence is not proof of strength. Most often, it is proof that something failed before the violence began. Malik considered this. Did you win? Victor glanced toward Natalie. No. That evening, Natalie found him sitting alone in the gymnasium. Children's drawings covered the walls. A basketball rolled slowly across the floor. Victor held a crayon portrait. It showed a tall black figure beside a round woman in green. Above them, a child had drawn a crooked red heart. Natalie stopped. Victor folded the paper. Who made that? Jordan. You kept it. He gave it to me. That wasn't my question. Victor stood. They were alone. She became aware of the silence, the dim overhead lights, and the faint smell of rain entering through an open window. Victor approached. Natalie did not move. He stopped close enough that she could see the dark shadow along his jaw. You have been avoiding being alone with me, he said. I have been working. You leave rooms when I enter. You make rooms feel smaller. His gaze dropped briefly to her lips. Do I frighten you? Yes. The answer seemed to surprise him. Natalie continued. But not in the way you think. What way, then? She should have stepped back. Instead, she looked directly into his eyes. You make me forget that being frightened is supposed to make me leave. Victor's breathing changed. Barely. But she noticed. He lifted his hand. His fingers moved toward a curl near her cheek. Then he stopped before touching her. The restraint felt more intimate than contact. You should leave, he said. This is my center. You should leave this room. Why? His voice lowered. Because I have spent 21 days pretending that repairing furniture is the reason I come here. Natalie's heart struck hard against her ribs. What is the reason? Victor's hand lowered. Before he could answer, the lights went out. The emergency alarm sounded. Victor moved instantly. He pulled Natalie behind him and drew the gun from beneath his jacket. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. His men entered with flashlights. Power was cut, one said. Vehicle stopped behind the building. Victor looked at Natalie. The man who had almost touched her disappeared. The Mafia Boss returned. Take her to the safe room. There is no safe room, Natalie said. There is now. 2 steel panels had been installed behind the supply closet without her knowledge. She stared at Victor. You renovated my building without permission? I improved 1 wall. You built a hidden bunker. It seemed practical. Despite the danger, anger flared. You cannot keep making decisions for me. Victor stepped closer. And you cannot keep standing where men are aiming weapons. I am not one of your possessions. His face became still. No. His fingers closed around her wrist, not painfully, but with absolute control. You are the first thing in my life I am terrified to treat like one. Then he pushed her into the safe room and sealed the door. Natalie remained inside for 14 minutes. She heard distant shouts, a gunshot, and then silence. When the door opened, Victor stood outside. There was blood across his knuckles. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "No." "Whose blood is that?" He did not answer. They found a man behind the building carrying gasoline, matches, and a city inspection schedule. The attacker survived. Victor's men took him before the police arrived. Natalie confronted Victor in the kitchen. "You abducted him." "I questioned him." "Where is he now?" "Alive." "That does not answer me. It is the only answer you require." She stared at the blood on his cuff. "This is what you are." "Yes." No excuse. No denial. Victor leaned both hands against the counter. "This is what I have always been." "And you think fixing chairs changes that?" "No." "Then why are you here?" His control finally cracked. "Because you told me I could not buy hope." The words filled the kitchen. Victor stepped toward her. "So I watched you create it from nothing. I watched you remember which mother needed bus fare and which boy pretended he had eaten dinner. I watched you stay late because a woman was afraid to go home. I watched you give away pieces of yourself, as if you believed they would grow back." Natalie's eyes burned. Victor's voice became quieter. "And I discovered that you were right." "About what?" "Money can build walls. Fear can keep enemies outside. Power can force politicians to kneel." He stopped in front of her. "But none of it can make a child believe tomorrow will be better." His hand lifted. This time he touched her, only the back of his fingers against her cheek. Natalie forgot how to breathe. "You do that," he said. The kitchen door opened. A young woman rushed inside. "Natalie, reporters are outside. Alderman Mercer says Harbor House failed an emergency inspection." Victor's hand fell. The city posted a closure notice the next morning. "Unsafe wiring. Structural instability. Fire code violation." Natalie knew half the claims were false. Mercer stood outside the building, surrounded by cameras. "This is about protecting families," he announced. "We cannot allow children inside a dangerous property." Natalie pushed through the reporters. "You approved our inspection 6 months ago. Conditions change." "Not without anyone entering the building." Mercer's smile remained polished. "The city has a responsibility to act." Behind him stood a representative from Ferraro Urban Holdings. Natalie recognized the company name. Victor arrived in a black sedan. Mercer's smile faltered. Victor walked through the crowd and stopped beside Natalie. The cameras erupted with flashes. Until that moment, Victor's support had remained private. Now he placed himself in public view. "Harbor House is structurally sound," he said. "My engineers inspected it this morning." Mercer recovered. "Private reports do not override city authority." "No, evidence does." Victor handed documents to a reporter. "Your office falsified inspection records, Alderman." The crowd exploded with questions. Mercer's face drained of color. Natalie looked at Victor. "You knew this would happen." "I expected it." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have told me not to come." "You're exposing yourself." "Yes." The press had spent years trying to connect Victor Moretti to the criminal world. By publicly challenging Mercer, he invited investigation into his businesses, political relationships, and hidden finances. Victor looked at her. "You asked me to stop writing checks from a distance. I didn't ask you to destroy your life." "No." His gaze moved over her face. "You asked me to stand beside people." The image appeared across every major news network by evening. Victor Moretti, standing beside Natalie Brooks beneath the weathered Harbor House sign. Some reports called him a philanthropist. Others called the center a front for organized crime. Donors withdrew. Parents became afraid. Protesters gathered outside. Someone painted Mafia charity across the front doors. Natalie found Victor cleaning the paint at midnight. He wore dark trousers and a black sweater. His bodyguards waited across the street. "You could have sent someone," she said. "I could have." She picked up a cloth and knelt beside him. For several minutes they worked in silence. The red paint stained their hands. "You didn't cause this," Natalie said. "Yes, I did." "Mercer caused it." "I gave him the weapon. You protected us." Victor looked at her. "I placed you in my war. You didn't force me to stay." "I should have." Natalie stopped scrubbing. "Do you hear yourself?" Constantly. It is exhausting. A laugh escaped her. Victor stared. What? I have never heard you make a joke. I did not. That makes it worse. A faint curve touched his mouth. It transformed his entire face. Natalie's chest tightened. Then headlights swept across the building. Victor's expression changed. A limousine stopped at the curb. A woman stepped out. She was elegant, tall and beautiful in a silver coat. Diamonds flashed at her ears. Victor stood. Serafina. The woman looked at Natalie, then at the paint cloth in Victor's hand. You clean walls now? What do you want? Your counsel is waiting. I left the council. You walked out. Yes. Serafina's gaze returned to Natalie. So this is her. Natalie Rose. And you are? Serafina De Luca. The name was familiar. De Luca Shipping had been connected to the Moretti organization for decades. She stepped closer to Victor. Our families agreed to announce the engagement next month. The cloth slipped from Natalie's fingers. Victor's eyes hardened. There is no engagement. Serafina smiled without warmth. Our fathers arranged it before yours died. My father has been dead 12 years. Agreements survive men. Not this one. Natalie looked away. She had no claim over Victor. They had not kissed. He had never promised her anything. Yet jealousy entered like a blade. Serafina noticed. Did he forget to mention me? There was nothing to mention, Victor said. To you, perhaps. Serafina walked back to the limousine. Before entering, she looked at Natalie. Men like Victor do not volunteer, Miss Brooks. They acquire. The car disappeared into the night. Natalie returned to the painted doors. Victor watched her. You believe her. I believe powerful men make arrangements ordinary people never hear about. There is no arrangement. You were supposed to marry her. I was supposed to do many things, but you didn't tell me. His voice lowered. You never ask whether I belong to someone. Natalie looked at him. And do you? Victor stepped forward. Rain began lightly, darkening the pavement around them. No. Does she belong to you? No. Then why did she look at me like I stole something? His hand closed around the back of Natalie's neck. Not roughly, possessively. The rain intensified. Because she recognized before you did, he said. Recognized what? That there is nothing left in me you have not already taken. Natalie's breath broke. Victor bent his head. He stopped with his mouth inches from hers. She felt his restraint trembling beneath perfect control. You should tell me to leave, he whispered. Do you want me to? No. Then stop asking me to save you from yourself. She kissed him. Victor remained still for one stunned second. Then one arm wrapped around her waist and pulled her against him. The kiss deepened with devastating restraint, as if he was still fighting the violence of wanting her. Rain soaked her curls, his sweater, the front of her coat. His hand moved across her back. Natalie felt the strength in him, the danger, the need, the impossible care he tried to conceal beneath both. When he finally pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. This changes nothing about the center, she whispered. It changes everything about me. For 3 days, Victor did not come to Harbor House. He called each night. The conversations began with security updates and ended hours later. Natalie learned that he hated jazz but loved old soul records, that he slept only 4 hours a night, that he could speak 4 languages but had never learned how to swim. Victor learned that Natalie kept emergency cash inside a cereal box, cried during documentaries about rescued animals, and had once broken a man's nose after he grabbed her in college. I find that difficult to imagine, he said. You have watched me challenge politicians and armed criminals. Yes, but punching a drunk man surprises you. I am imagining the man's confusion. She smiled into the darkness of her bedroom. Where are you? My office. At 1 in the morning? I work. You avoid sleep. Silence. What happens when you sleep? Memories become less polite. Natalie's voice softened. You don't have to tell me. I know. Another silence. Then Victor said, Elena called me the night she died. Natalie sat up. I did not answer. My father and I were negotiating control of one of the docks. I believed becoming powerful would eventually allow me to protect her. His breathing remained steady. Too steady. She left a message. She said she was cold. Natalie closed her eyes. Victor continued. I bought the building where they found her. I burned it. The confession settled between them. That didn't make you feel better. No. It wasn't meant to. No. You were punishing yourself. Victor did not respond. Natalie held the phone tighter. You were 19. I was her brother. You were also trapped. That is not absolution. No, it's truth. He released a breath. What do I do with it? You stop treating pain like a debt that can only be paid with more pain. Victor was quiet for so long she thought the call had ended. Then he said, You make impossible things sound reasonable. That's my job. No. His voice lowered. That is your gift. The next morning, Natalie received a package. Inside was Elena Moretti's final voicemail. Not the recording itself. A written transcript. Victor had never shared it with anyone. At the bottom, he had written one sentence. I do not know how to stop being the man who failed her. Natalie drove to his penthouse. Victor lived above the city in a world of glass, black marble, and perfect silence. He opened the door himself. He wore no jacket or tie. His shirt sleeves were rolled back. A bruise darkened one side of his ribs beneath the fabric. Natalie held up the transcript. Why did you send this? Because you asked what happens when I sleep. You didn't have to prove it. I was not proving anything. What happened to your ribs? Nothing. Victor. His jaw tightened. A disagreement. With whom? My counsel. Natalie stepped inside. The penthouse had no family photographs, no personal objects, and no evidence that anyone truly lived there, except on the dining table. A child's crayon drawing. Jordan's picture of Victor and Natalie beneath the red heart. She looked at him. You brought it here. Yes. Her anger faded. Victor closed the door. Mercer is moving faster. He filed an emergency petition to transfer Harbor House to city control. We'll fight it. The judge is purchased. Then we appeal. He intends to demolish the building before an appeal can be heard. Natalie's stomach turned. When? 48 hours. She paced toward the windows. There are records, case files, medications, food. All of it can be moved. That's not the point. I know. Do you? She turned. You have buildings everywhere. To you, Harbor House is brick and wood. Victor crossed the room. To me, Harbor House is the place where you exist most completely. The words stopped her. He continued. I know what it means. Then help me save it. I can purchase the property tonight. And place your name on it. No condition. Natalie stared at him. Victor had changed. She could see it. The man at the fundraiser had offered money as control. The man before her was offering it as surrender. Still, she shook her head. If you buy it, Mercer will say the center became part of your empire. It would survive. At what cost? Why must survival remain pure? Because the families there have spent their lives being told they should accept anything, as long as it keeps them alive. Victor's expression hardened. This is not about dignity anymore. This is about your refusal to bend. And this is about your belief that fear and money solve everything. They solve demolition. They don't solve what comes afterward. Victor turned away. Natalie saw his shoulders tighten. You would rather lose the building than allow me to protect it. I want you to protect what it represents. Those are the words of someone who has never watched a body become cold. She flinched. Victor immediately regretted it. But he did not apologize. Instead, he walked toward the window. Natalie looked at the bruise beneath his shirt, the empty penthouse, and the drawing on the table. You don't want to save Harbor House, she said softly. You want to save Elena. His entire body went still. And every time I refuse your protection, you become 19 again. Victor turned. His face was terrifyingly calm. You should leave. Because I'm wrong. Because you are not. Natalie approached. You cannot turn every person you love into a second chance. His eyes sharpened at the word love. She had not meant to say it. Or perhaps she had. Victor's voice was almost inaudible. Is that what this is? Natalie's heart pounded. Before she could answer, the penthouse windows exploded. Victor threw her to the floor. Glass rained across the room. A second shot struck the wall. Sniper fire. Victor covered Natalie with his body and dragged her behind the marble kitchen island. His security team rushed inside. Rooftop west, someone shouted. Victor pulled a gun from beneath the counter. Natalie stared. You keep weapons in the kitchen. I keep weapons everywhere. Another bullet tore through a cabinet. Victor cupped the back of her head. Stay down. You're bleeding. Glass had sliced his shoulder. "It is nothing." He began to rise. Natalie grabbed his shirt. "Don't." His eyes met hers. For the first time, she saw fear in Victor Moretti. Not fear of death, fear of leaving her. He covered her hand with his. "I will come back." "You don't know that." "Yes." "How?" "Because you have not answered my question." Then he disappeared into the smoke. The assassin escaped. Victor's men found the rifle, but no shooter. By nightfall, Victor had moved Natalie to a safe house near Lake Michigan. It was an old mansion hidden behind iron gates and winter-bare trees. Natalie stood in the bedroom while a doctor stitched Victor's shoulder. He refused anesthesia. She watched from across the room. When the doctor left, Victor buttoned his shirt. "You should rest." "I do not rest while enemies are breathing." That is exactly when people usually need rest. He approached the window. The sniper was not Ferraro. "How do you know?" "Ferraro wants the center. Killing me would start a war he cannot win." "Then who?" "My counsel." Natalie's breath caught. "Your own people? Some believe you have made me weak." "Have I?" Victor looked at her. "Yes." The honesty hurt. He walked closer. "You have made me hesitate before violence. You have made me question men I trusted for years. You have made me stand in rooms where children paint suns and wonder why I built an empire that creates only shadows." Natalie swallowed. "That doesn't sound weak. In my world, it is fatal." "Then leave it." He gave a humorless smile. "Men like me do not retire. You own legitimate companies, funded by blood. You also fund shelters, with the same money. So decide what it becomes next." Victor studied her. "You believe redemption is that simple?" "No, I believe it's that difficult." Silence filled the room. Outside, waves struck the dark shoreline. Natalie touched the bandage on his shoulder. Victor's hand closed around her waist. "You should not be here," he said. "Neither should you. I brought you into this. I walked. You did not understand the road. I understand enough." His forehead lowered to hers. "If I leave my position, the city burns while men fight for it. Then don't leave it empty." "What are you asking?" "I'm asking whether you are powerful enough to change what power means." The words struck him. Natalie saw it happen. Victor looked at her as though she had opened a door he had spent his life refusing to see. Then he kissed her. There was no restraint this time. Only hunger, fear, and months of denied emotion, compressed into one moment. He lifted her onto the edge of the table, hands firm around her curves, holding her as though every part of her was precious rather than excessive. Natalie wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling his heartbeat hammer beneath her palms. When the kiss ended, Victor remained between her knees. "I love you," he said. No hesitation, no softness. The words sounded like a vow made before war. Natalie's eyes filled. Victor's thumb brushed beneath one of them. "You do not have to say it. I love you too." Something in his face broke open. Then his phone rang. The moment vanished. Victor answered. He listened for less than 10 seconds. His expression became deadly. "What happened?" Natalie asked. He lowered the phone. Mercer took Jordan. The boy had been walking home from school with his mother. A city vehicle stopped beside them. Men claiming to be child welfare investigators forced Jordan inside. His mother was struck when she tried to intervene. Mercer sent a message 20 minutes later. Natalie was to sign documents surrendering Harbor House to the city. Victor was to transfer control of 3 shipping routes to Ferraro. If they refused, Jordan would die. Natalie's hands shook. "This is my fault." Victor took her face between his palms. "No." He chose Jordan because he saw us together. He chose Jordan because he is a coward. We have to give them what they want. Victor's gaze became cold. "No. He's 6 years old. And if we surrender, Mercer will take another child tomorrow." Natalie pulled away. "You can say that because it isn't your child." The words landed hard. Victor became completely still. Natalie regretted them instantly. "I'm sorry." "No," he said. "You are afraid." He turned toward his men. "Prepare the transfer documents." Natalie started. "You just said, we will give them what they believe they want." An underground parking garage was chosen for the exchange. Mercer arrived with Ferraro men and 2 city police officers on his payroll. Jordan sat inside a black van. His hands were tied. Natalie saw him through the window. Every instinct screamed at her to run toward him. Victor held her beside him. "Wait. He's terrified." "I know." Mercer approached. He wore a camel coat and the satisfied smile of a man who believed power had finally chosen him. "Natalie." "Mr. Moretti." Victor held a leather case. "The documents." Mercer nodded toward Jordan. "First, you signed the property transfer." Natalie took the papers. Her signature line waited at the bottom. Harbor House would belong to the city. 30 years of service would disappear with one stroke of a pen. Jordan began crying inside the van. Natalie signed. Mercer smiled. "Now the shipping routes." Victor opened the case. Before he could remove the documents, a gunshot cracked through the garage. One of Victor's men fell. Chaos erupted. Ferraro gunmen fired from behind the concrete pillars. Victor shoved Natalie behind an SUV. "Stay here." "Jordan." "I will get him." He moved into the gunfire. Natalie watched him cross the garage with terrifying precision. He shot one man, disarmed another, and used the concrete barriers as cover. Mercer ran toward the van. Natalie realized what he intended. He was going to take Jordan and escape. She ran. "Natalie!" Victor shouted. Mercer reached the driver's door. Natalie grabbed the handle. He struck her across the face. She fell against the van. "You self-righteous idiot," Mercer hissed. "You could have taken the money." Natalie tasted blood. "You were never going to let them keep the center." "Of course not. Poor people don't need community centers. They need distance from valuable neighborhoods." He raised the gun. Victor appeared behind him. The barrel of Victor's weapon pressed against Mercer's head. "Lower it." Mercer froze. "You can't kill a city official in a public garage." Victor's voice was quiet. "I can kill you anywhere." Natalie climbed to her feet. "Jordan." Victor's eyes never left Mercer. "Open the fan." Mercer smiled. "You think this ends with me? Your own council wants her dead. Ferraro wants your territory. Every man you built will tear your empire apart the moment you choose her." Victor stepped closer. "I already chose her." Mercer turned the gun toward Natalie. Victor fired. The shot struck Mercer in the shoulder. His weapon fell. Victor drove him to the ground. Natalie opened the van and pulled Jordan into her arms. The boy clung to her. "It's okay," she whispered. "I've got you." Police sirens approached. Real police this time. Victor's men secured the garage. Mercer laughed from the floor. "You think they'll believe you? I own judges, officers, inspectors." Victor looked toward the entrance. "No. You owned them." Federal agents entered. Behind them walked Serafina De Luca. Natalia started. Victor had made a deal. For weeks, Serafina had been gathering evidence against Mercer, Ferraro, and the corrupt members of Victor's council. The false engagement story had allowed her to move between the families without suspicion. Every financial record, bribed official, illegal property transfer, and planned assassination had been documented. Mercer's kidnapping demand had been recorded. The exchange had been transmitted live to federal investigators. Natalie looked at Victor. "You planned this." "I planned everything except you running toward a gun." Jordan clung to her neck. "You said you'd get him." "I did." Victor's shoulder was bleeding again. Natalie touched his face. "You could have died. So could you. I was trying to protect him." His eyes darkened. "I know. It is one of the many things I love about you and intend to argue about for the rest of my life." Mercer was arrested. The Ferraro organization collapsed within 3 months. Victor testified privately before a federal task force, surrendered control of his illegal shipping routes, and provided evidence against members of his own organization. The decision nearly killed him. 3 assassination attempts followed. One destroyed a Moretti warehouse. Another struck his convoy on Lower Wacker Drive. The third came inside an abandoned church where Victor met the last members of his council. Natalie was not supposed to be there. She arrived after receiving a message from Victor's phone. "Come alone if you want him alive." Inside the church, candlelight trembled across broken statues. Victor knelt near the altar. Blood covered one side of his white shirt. 3 men surrounded him. The oldest, Dominic Vescari, had served Victor's father. He held a gun against Victor's head. Natalie stopped in the aisle. Victor looked up. His fury was immediate. "Why did you come? One of them used your phone. You should have stayed away." Dominic smiled. "She never listens. That is the problem with women who believe compassion makes them brave. Natalie kept her hands visible. What do you want? For Victor to remember who he is. Victor's gaze stayed on her. Leave. Dominic pressed the weapon harder against his head. He gave away routes our fathers died to control. He exposed judges we purchased. He dismantled an empire for a woman who washes graffiti from doors. Natalie looked at Victor. No. He dismantled it because he finally understood what it was costing him. Dominic laughed. You think he can become good? No. Victor's eyes changed. Natalie continued. I think good is something people choose when it costs them. Silence moved through the church. Dominic's smile faded. You still believe in hope? Yes. Even now? Especially now. One of the younger men shifted. Victor noticed. So did Natalie. She took one step forward. Victor told me violence means something failed before it began. Dominic glanced toward the young gunman. That second of distraction was enough. Victor moved. He seized Dominic's wrist, turned the weapon, and fired into the ceiling. The church erupted. Natalie dropped behind a pew. Victor fought with brutal precision. One man fell. Another surrendered. Dominic pulled a knife and drove it toward Victor's ribs. Victor caught his arm. They struggled beneath the ruined altar. Dominic hissed. Your father would despise what she made you. Victor looked toward Natalie. Then he broke Dominic's wrist. She made me understand why he deserved my hatred. Dominic reached for the fallen gun. Victor shot him. The sound echoed through the church. Dominic collapsed. Victor stood beneath the cross, covered in blood. For one terrible moment, he looked exactly like the monster the newspapers described. Natalie rose. Victor stared at the body, then at the gun in his hand. He set it down, not because anyone ordered him to, because he chose to. Natalie walked toward him. He looked exhausted. Older. Free. You should be afraid of me, he said. I am. Pain entered his face. She touched his blood-streaked cheek. But I'm not afraid you'll hurt me. You should be afraid of what follows me. I am. Then why are you still here? Natalie placed his hand over her heart. Because fear is not always a reason to leave. Victor closed his eyes. The first time she saw him cry, he made no sound. He simply bowed his head against hers, while sirens approached the church. Harbor House reopened 6 months later. The original brick exterior remained. So did the children's painted signs, the scratched wooden floors, and the wall where generations of families had written messages of encouragement. The repairs were funded through a public community trust. No corporate name appeared on the building. No donor controlled it. Victor transferred $12 million into the trust and gave the board complete legal authority over how it was used. His name appeared nowhere. When Natalie asked why, he said, "It does not belong to me. What if people never know what you did?" You know. That's enough? He looked at her. It is more than I deserve. Victor's legitimate companies survived the investigations. Some contracts disappeared. Some allies abandoned him. His fortune became smaller. He did not seem to notice. He transformed Moretti Security into a regulated protection service for shelters, clinics, and community organizations facing threats. He established Elena's Door, a confidential network helping teenagers escape violent homes without being returned to their abusers. He still frightened politicians. He still spoke calmly when angry. He still carried a gun. He was not suddenly gentle with the world, but with Natalie, he learned to ask before protecting. Most of the time, 1 year after the fundraiser, Harbor House held another celebration. There were no crystal chandeliers, no politicians. Children filled the gymnasium with handmade decorations. Mrs. Carter supervised the dessert table. Jordan, now 7, wore a small suit and guarded a mysterious velvet box with extreme seriousness. Natalie entered wearing a cream dress that flowed over her full, curvy figure. Her curls framed her face. Victor stood near the center of the gym in a black Italian suit. The room became quiet. Natalie stopped. What did you do? Victor looked at the families gathered around them. For once, very little. Jordan ran forward and handed him the box. Victor lowered himself to one knee. Natalie covered her mouth. The feared man who had once offered $2 million in exchange for his name on the building now knelt beneath a paper banner painted by children. He opened the box. Inside was an emerald ring. "Natalie Brooks," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You told me hope could not be purchased." Tears blurred her vision. "You were right." Soft laughter moved through the room. Victor continued. I spent my life believing power meant possessing what I could not afford to lose. You taught me that love is not possession, it is presence. Natalie's tears fell. You taught me to stay when I could not control the outcome, to protect without taking, to give without being praised, to believe that a man can become different, not because the past disappears, but because he finally stops repeating it. His chaza held hers. I cannot promise you safety. I have too many enemies and too many scars. Natalie smiled through her tears. Very romantic. A faint smile touched his mouth. I can promise that you will never face either alone. He lifted the ring. Marry me. The children held their breath. Natalie looked around Harbor House. At the repaired walls. At the families who had survived eviction, violence, hunger, grief, and every official who had told them they were worth less than the land beneath their feet. Then she looked at Victor, the man who had arrived with money, the man who had stayed with a hammer. Yes. The gymnasium erupted. Victor rose and slid the ring onto her finger. Then he kissed her, while Jordan cheered, Mrs. Carter cried, and even Victor's bodyguards applauded from beside the doors. Later, after the celebration ended, Natalie found him alone in the hallway. He stood before a new framed photograph. It showed the center's opening day. Beneath it were the words, "Hope lives where people choose to stay." Victor felt her approach. "You disappeared from your own engagement party," she said. I needed silence. Natalie slipped her hand into his. He looked at the ring. "Do you regret refusing the donation?" "No, not even slightly. You were unbearable. I remain unbearable." "Yes, but now you carry groceries." Victor turned toward her. "You humiliated me in front of 200 people. You survived. I became obsessed with proving you wrong. And did you?" His gaze moved through the center. The classrooms, the food pantry, the photographs of children who had grown up and returned as volunteers. Finally, he looked at her. "No." Natalie smiled. Victor drew her against him. Outside, snow began falling over Chicago. The neighborhood glowed beneath streetlights. Families walked home carrying leftovers from the celebration. Across the road, black SUVs waited not as symbols of occupation, but protection. Victor pressed a kiss to Natalie's forehead. "You cannot buy hope," he said. "No." His arms tightened around her. "But you can help protect the place where it grows." Natalie rested her head against his chest. For years, Victor Moretti had believed love was something dangerous men seized before it could be taken from them. Natalie taught him differently. Love was not the hand closing around something fragile. It was the hand opening. It was money given without a name, a weapon lowered by choice, a powerful man kneeling before the woman who had refused to fear him, and a light left burning above the doors of Harbor House, so anyone lost in the darkness would know there was still somewhere to go. Somewhere they would be seen. Somewhere they would be protected. Somewhere hope could never be bought, because it had already been given freely.